Joe, is it okay if I spill water all over your music?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Hey everyone, how's it going? Hey. Happy Father's Day to the dad and dad to be in the room. Yeah. Hopefully, if that's a thing for you, you gotta celebrate your pops today, or wish him a happy Father's Day. And if I know Father's Day means different things to different people for sure. So I hope in some way, whether it's your earthly dad or your heavenly Father, that this day is a day to take some time and be thankful for what you got. So hey, welcome to New Life. If you're new or kind of newer, we're a church here that meets on campus, just like right now. And we're mostly college students, so summer is a different time. I like the summer. I don't know how you all feel about that. It's quieter, and there's not as many people here. I like all the people, but I feel like you get opportunities to hang out more with people that you don't normally hang out. So we also have this thing where we unintentionally gender separate sometimes. It doesn't mean to happen, but it just sort of does. So to those of you warriors who went to the other side, I see you. Good work. Good work. All right. Let's put a stop to that. All right. Okay. Anyways, hey, my name's Caleb. I went to school here a couple times. Just couldn't keep me out, and now I work here. So at Ohio State. Yeah, not UF. Although I sort of work for UF. Yeah. So and a couple things about me. I despise conflict. Yeah, hate it. I'm better at it than I used to be, but I really used to hate it a lot. So, shall we have that in common? Yeah. Don't like conflict at all. And I used to really, when it used to bother me when people in my life would fight, I would get angry at them for fighting each other. It didn't have anything to do with me. But I felt personally offended by people having conflict around me. I don't know what the case is with that, but it really would bother me. Yeah. I wanted everybody to be at peace around me and never fight. I've gotten a lot better at dealing with conflict because another interesting fact about me is I was counting it this afternoon, approximately 39 different roommates. So in the course of my existence. And that's not like summer camp cabin people. I mean, that's like lease signing, so minimum of 3-month living. Yeah. So, and I think 18 of those I've shared a room with. So when that happens, you just get to really get exposed to all levels of conflict, various styles and habits and lack of good habits. Yeah, dishes particularly. Anybody had a dishes conflict in their life before? Yeah, I bet so. Yeah. Anybody been scrubbing the dishes while you're cursing your roommates in your head? Yeah, that probably happens sometimes. Yeah. So I think living with a bunch of people has helped me out with conflict, which has been a pretty nice thing. Yeah, the dishes are particularly a crucible, I think, of a given apartment. Yeah, you learn a lot about people. So we had one point in the first large apartment I lived in, which anybody else besides just you, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Wow, we're getting old. Yep. We used to live in an apartment on Chittenden Avenue, which you may remember. If you were here, we referred to it as the Chitter. Which is not necessarily appropriate, but we would have announcements from church, like Bible study in the Chitter this week. So you're welcome, parents that are visiting today. But dishes were a real thing there. We got lots. I think there were several arguments there. Clashes of personality styles. We eventually landed on a cycle where like Chris had Monday, Caleb had Tuesday, Kyle had Wednesday, so on and so forth. That's a mistake. If you ever decide that you need to do like a dish system in your apartment, dedicating someone to a specific day is a mistake, because if they don't do their day, well, now it's Thursday. So either you're going to throw the whole thing off or whatever. So and it's funny too, because people who've never loaded a dishwasher, I think, in their lives suddenly cared about whether you put the dishes in the dishwasher on Wednesday. So you learn a lot about people, living together, and I think that's helped me out. I just want to share some things about me because I'm supposed to do that before I start a sermon, and also because we're going to talk about conflict. Yeah. So if you've been following along with us, we're in Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, or in chapter 5. Nehemiah, they're building a wall in this book. A lot of the book is dedicated to the building of a wall. But not like just some drywall action. It's like they're trying to build a protective wall around the city of Jerusalem. That's like a really big city. That's where God's temple is. So there's a lot at stake to protecting this city defensively. And back in this time, hundreds and hundreds BC, a wall was like your best strategy. All right, so a wall, having a good fortified wall with some places to put some people with weapons. I think I'm not an expert in that kind of age of military, but I know a wall is a big deal. So they're working on a wall, and really God sort of, if you're familiar too much, or if you spend a little bit of time in the Bible, it is really sort of a big narrative about who God is and sort of how He redeems His people. And so in this particular snapshot, God's really leading the charge here to get these people to build this wall. They're doing it for Him and for His people in Israel. So that's something that's good to keep in mind as well. So we're going to learn some stuff about God and people in Nehemiah, and specifically in this chapter. But before we dig in, I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about this internal conflict. And last week, Andrew spoke to us, so thanks for bringing that message, Andrew, about when people start, when they team up to go on mission for God, which is sort of a good way to look at Nehemiah, there's going to be opposition. And so he spoke to us about lots of different kinds of opposition that come when you're doing that. So if you're kind of moving towards God, the enemy is going to be in opposition to you. But what we're going to talk about today is another type, and that's sort of internal opposition. So if you're taking notes, this is point one before we even read the Bible. Hopefully I'm allowed to do that. Point number one is opposition to the mission can also come from within. Opposition to the mission, which rhymes, can also come from within. Yeah. So this happens sometimes, all right? Church conflicts happen. If you grew up in church, you may have experienced even seeing some people have arguments over things. I remember when I was in high school, my pastor joined the school board for the city, and that caused some serious internal conflict. Because next thing you know, they're arguing because the school board has to decide whether to fire the basketball coach. Some of the basketball girls are in our church. Or the school board has to decide whether to tear down the old school to build a new one. The old school's historic, but there's sewage leaking in it. And he has a vote on this. In fact, he's like a swing vote on this. So our church lost, I think, maybe 6 families who got so heated about his stance on the school board that they couldn't worship in his church. So these kind of oppositions happen, and there's actually arguments for a lot more stupid things. If you want to have fun sometime, just Google dumbest reasons churches have split. There's a lot of wealth out there. I mean, it's really actually pathetic, and it makes you angry if you think about it too much. But if you don't think about it too much, it's just funny. So I would argue, not getting too in depth about it. I have some for you. There's a guy named Tom Rainier who sort of serves as he's like a support guy. He writes support pieces for pastors and churches. And one time he asked people to tweet in some of the most ridiculous things that have caused serious, heated, either divisive arguments or church splits in churches. And he had 25. I won't read all of them, but I did copy a few on here that I thought would be interesting. Arguments or some facial hair ones. So I think I would be in trouble. Argument over the appropriate length of the worship pastor's beard. And then also... where was that? A petition was sent around. One church, they sent a petition around behind the scenes trying to get people to sign that all church staff should be clean shaven. So that went around. A fight over which picture of Jesus to put in the foyer. So, it's important. So I suppose it depends on who took the picture. Let's see here. A deacon accusing another deacon of sending an anonymous letter and deciding to settle the matter in the parking lot. I don't know if you're familiar with an anonymous letter. It is what it sounds like, but somebody somewhere decided this was like a cool church tradition. It's been spread around. Lots of churches have these, where someone writes a letter complaining about the pastor or a deacon or the way the worship music is, and they'll post it, but they won't sign it. So, where that's in my opinion, a real D-bag move. That's my personal opinion. But that can be pretty popular. People think that's a good way to settle conflict, like a 5th grader. That happened a few times in my church, so I get kind of heated about that one. An argument over whether the church should be allowed to have deviled eggs at the church potlucks. Yep, that's real. One church member was chastised because she brought a bottle of vanilla syrup to the coffee table and people thought it looked too much like liquor. A disagreement over coffee, someone decided to switch from Folgers to Starbucks, members left the church. And then some church members left the church because one other church member hid the vacuum cleaner from that church member, and it resulted in a major church fight and a split. So these kind of things are like modern examples of just really dumb stuff, you know. I'd like to say that we at New Life here are immune from some of this just foolishness. I don't know if we're immune. I mean, maybe it's a slippery slope. No one plans to get to that place. But we're not immune to conflict happening, for sure. But opposition can come from within. So those are some dumb examples. But I'll tell you that I think that the unity of the church is really important. Okay, so just like what I'm thinking of is the prayer that Jesus prayed right before the crucifixion, and he said a prayer for the disciples, and then he said a prayer not only praying for those, but for everyone else who will follow after them. Okay, this might be ringing a bell to some of you, I hope so, because we tried to talk about this passage a good amount in New Life. And he said, what he prayed for, and that's AKA, he prayed for anyone who's going to believe in Jesus, believe in himself after the disciples, which we'd be included in that. And he prayed that they would be one. Yeah, he said, I pray that they would be one, just like you and I are one, he said to the Father, because we know that they're one. So he said, I pray that they would be one, the people who are going to believe will be one, just like you and I are one, so that the world will know that you sent me. So something about the unity, that kind of, I think, Holy Spirit-driven unity that Christ puts into us as a church, and as the church, that unity is supposed to be the thing that shows the world that God sent Christ to us. So there's something that's supposed to be really special about it. It's like a major strategy in the mission of God. So if you're an enemy of the mission of God, it seems to be like a good place to attack. Right? So unity of the church is really important, and opposition to the mission can come from within. All right? I would say that one of the small groups that, and this actually goes way back to that residence. I think the only other person who experienced this with me was you in this year. Maybe, no, I think just you. Either way, I would say one of the small groups that I had where we probably pushed the most to be missional, to be intentional, we were really pushing people to try to invite other people into our small group. We were really pushing people to try to talk in a way that would be welcoming, and we were seeing good strides in that group. Was the group that I experienced the most internal conflict, hands down. I almost quit. But I'd say that it's one where we pushed for the most progress as well. And I think that's just a pattern you're going to see. That when, as a group of people for God to get together and they push forward, there's going to be conflict. All right, and how we handle that is really important. The good news is that I think we have an awesome example in Nehemiah of how things go wrong and how things can go right. And I think that we'll be able to learn some stuff in here about us and God and conflict and how to handle it. Okay? So if you want to read along, we'll either be in the screen for Nehemiah chapter 5, or you can read along in your own passage of your Bible. We'll take a drink and we'll read it. Do you guys know Starbucks triple filters their water? Yeah, they do.
You know water's water.
Snarky. That's for audience participation. Okay. Nehemiah 5. Here's what it says. Now there arose a great outcry of the people and their wives against their Jewish brothers. For there were those who said, so outcry from Jewish people against the Jewish people in this land. For there were those who said, with our sons and our daughters we are many, so let us get grain that we may eat and keep alive. There were also those who said, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our houses to get grain because of the famine. And there were those who said, we have borrowed money for the king's tax on our fields and our vineyards. Now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers, our children as are their children. Yet we are forcing our sons and daughters to be slaves, and some of our daughters have already been enslaved. But it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit about what's happening here, okay? So you've got some folks who are poor coming and raising up this great outcry. That, if you're not familiar too, there's a couple places in the Bible where when people are oppressed, that is sort of the usual phrasing. So in the same way, like when the Israelites were slaves in Egypt, it says that there arose a great outcry, and that's what God heard. Okay, so it's using that language of it's sort of language of the oppressed in the Bible. That kind of cry that raises up to God's ears. So you've got these poor people in the community, and they're raising up an outcry against other people in the community who aren't so poor. And what they're saying is, basically, there's a couple things. We can't eat, all right? We can't get food. We can't afford food. Another thing is, we've mortgaged our fields and our vineyards and our houses to get grain because of the famine. So not only are we poor, we're in a state where we can't get food. In order to get food, people have been saying, in our own community, people have been saying, we'll give you grain, but you're going to owe us money for it. And they said, we don't have money. I said, okay, well that's fine. Just let me live in your house. Or let me take all the produce from your fields or your vineyards and then we'll pay that back, okay, till it's even. So, and then there's some people saying, we borrowed money for the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. So same kind of thing. Now they're trying to borrow money to pay for the mortgaging of the fields and the vineyards that they've loaned so they can pay for the grain that they can eat because of the famine. So all you really need to know about this is there's sort of like a cyclical cycle. That's redundant. Of poverty and oppression happening here. Okay. So people saying, hey, we can't eat, so we're borrowing money to be able to eat, but in order to borrow money, we've got to loan our sources of income, our vineyards, and our stability, our houses. But then they have a new shortage of money because they aren't getting any gain from their fields and vineyards and houses. Okay, so it's just they're stuck. All right, so that's important to know. Okay, so they bring that to Nehemiah. Let's keep going and see what Nehemiah says when he sees it. He says, "And I was angry when I heard their outcry, and I heard these words. And I took counsel with myself." It's just a funny way of saying, like, I thought about it for a little bit. Took counsel with myself, and I brought charges against the nobles and the officials, so some of the wealthier, more powerful people within the Jewish community. Then I said to them, "You are exacting interest, each from his brother." And I held a great assembly against them and said to them, "We, as far as we are able, have bought back our Jewish brothers who have been sold to the nations. But you even sell your brothers that they may be sold to us." They were silent and could not find a word to say. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a little bit. So Nehemiah kind of takes into account some of the things that he's heard, and he basically shoots back with them a couple of things. One, he's saying, like, you're exacting interest each from his own brother. And the reason why that's a big deal is because in the Old Testament law, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, it does not permit you to charge interest for fellow Hebrews. Okay. So if someone from another country, you have a loan out from them, you can charge them interest, but he says, these are your brothers. You can't charge interest from your own people. So they are breaking the law. Okay, so he's saying, number one, you can't be doing that. And then number two, if you're, just to recap again where we're at on a historical scale, it's a huge deal that they've been able to return here. Okay, so this is sort of, that where we're at in history is that the land was conquered and the Jews were exiled, and then with Nehemiah and Ezra and a couple others, they were able to come back. And so there's been sort of this great returning, this idea that maybe God is now bringing us back into the land that he took us out of because we broke the law. But in order to bring some of these people back, they actually had to purchase them out of slavery. And so what Nehemiah is saying is, did we purchase these people out of slavery just so you could put them back into slavery to yourselves, so we have to buy them back from ourselves again? You're missing the point completely. And so what's happening here, and what I think is a general, if I'm going to borrow some language from the Secret Church thing that a few of us got to hang out with, a timeless truth that you can see from this, and number two, is going to be self-interest can decay a community of God's people. Self-interest can decay a community of God's people. So what you're kind of seeing in this is that these officials are looking at the poverty of their brothers and sisters within the land, and they're seeing an opportunity to make a buck. Which, if you know anything about God and God's Word, God hates the oppression of the poor. So you've got to know this is already pretty off base from what the people of God are supposed to look like. But what they were doing at the heart of this conflict is really people in the community saying, this looks like a way for me to put my interests above the interests of other people. And that kind of thing is always going to be poisonous to a community of God. I'm going to read, throughout a couple times I'm going to read you a few passages that I don't have on the wall, but I want you to kind of listen to them, okay? So in James, which is in the New Testament now, this is James, probably brother of Jesus, writing to a bunch of Christians. He says even, why are there quarrels and fights among you? Why are there quarrels and fights among you? He's going to answer it. It's because you're full of selfish desires that fight to control your body. You want something you don't have, and you will do anything to get at it. You will even kill. But you still cannot get what you want, and you won't get it by fighting and arguing. And then he tells them you should pray for it. Yet even when you do pray, your prayers aren't answered because you pray for it just for selfish reasons. So when James was writing these people, you're seeing the same kind of attitude. He's saying, why is there this quarreling and fighting among you? It's because you're being selfish, you're looking out for your own interests, and you're going to do anything you can to get what you want. So this attitude, and I could point to like 20 different verses where it's pretty clear that people who follow after God are supposed to not put their interests above and beyond the interests of other people. Okay, so that's just not something that we're supposed to do. But we see this at work in churches all the time. I think this should be like a mark of Christianity. Should be that we aren't this way. But I think we see it a lot, even passively. So yeah, you can see really selfish, dumb stuff like those very silly coffee examples and things like that, where people had their idea, they were so passionate about something so dumb. But people can be passionate about things that aren't done and still put their interest above other people. People cannot be passionate and still put their interest above other people. Example, I think, again, of the church that I grew up with, which just so I don't sound this way, I am thankful for the church that I grew up with. Okay? I mean, it was a big part of my development and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that I would love to see different about it. One of which is, I'd say, probably upwards of 50% of the people who are hanging out there are going for sort of this spiritual exchange of goods and services. So like, I'm going, and I'm going to give you my time, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my tithe, and I expect you to fill me up spiritually for the week. I'm going to sit in this chair, someone's going to speak to me, hopefully I need to hear something relevant about my life, there's going to be worship music, hopefully it's the kind that helps me connect with God, and then I'm going to leave when it's over. I'm not going to talk to anybody, I'm going to get out, I'm going to go through the week, I'm going to come back and expect to get filled up next week. Right? And so tell me what isn't seeking after selfish interest about that. There's no desire to come and to connect with another person. There's no desire to come to be able to invest in God or other people, to see how you can serve the community. Right? And nowhere in the Bible does it say that church is some event where you're supposed to come and take. That's a foreign idea. Okay? So that's something that's just been manipulated and changed throughout time. And I would say, like, have we seen folks roll through New Life the same? Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're really blessed to have a community that people plug in, they get in, and they want to serve other people here. But like, have I seen people who are just here to check the box on Sunday and peace out and don't really plug in? Absolutely, we see that. And I'd say that's the same kind of attitude. It's passive. Okay, no one would look and be like, that's a selfish person per se. But are they here to serve God or serve other people, or are they here to check a box for themselves? And so I think that's something to think about. I mean, whether that's now or later down the road, what kind of are your motivations for being here? What are your motivations within the community? Okay, well let's try to put a positive spin on it. Nehemiah handles things well. The community kind of turns around. So we're going to pick up now where it was in verse 9, right there where it says, "So I said." So I said, the thing that you're doing is not good. Ought you not to walk in the fear of our God to prevent the taunts of the nations, our enemies? Moreover, I and my brothers and my servants are lending them money and grain, but let us abandon this exacting of interest. Return to them this very day their fields, their vineyards, their olive orchards, and their houses, and the percentage of money, grain, wine, and oil that you have been exacting from them. Then they said, we will restore these, and will require nothing from them. We will do as you say. And then I called the priests and made them swear to do as they had promised, and I also shook out the fold of my garment. I'll explain that in a minute. And said, so may God shake out every man from his house, and from his labor who does not keep this promise. So may he be shaken out empty. And all the assembly said, Amen. And praise the Lord. And the people did as they had promised. Okay, so Nehemiah is saying, hey, this is wrong. Don't you fear God? Don't you have any fear of God at all? Aren't you concerned that we don't want these people to be taunting us, that are trying to destroy us already, the same people that Andrew told us about last week? And then basically he says, you're going to return all the interest, and you're going to return whatever you're loaning on them as a mortgage. Okay, so really above and beyond what the law even expects. The law would say you got to return back the interest, but he's saying we're going to end this cycle of poverty. You're going to return back everything you have on a mortgage. These are your brothers. We have to put their interest above our own. And then basically he says, you got to do this. They said, we'll do it. He said, we'll see. So he called in the priests, and then he did this sort of this ceremony, this shaking out, which, you can gather what it is, right? It would be similar, but a little bit more intense than like saying, emptying out your pockets. And being like, so God may empty out your pockets if you don't keep this. But it's more like, God's going to shake you off the earth, So I don't know where the fold of the robe is either. I'd be really interested in seeing that. In my mind, it's at the bottom corner, but I'm not sure. So if anybody finds out, I'd love to know. So he says this, okay, that's what he says they have to do. And I think it's interesting that they go sort of above and beyond. But this is the thing, and this is really just an inverse of point 2. If you're keeping notes, point 3 is the community of God thrives on selfless interest. Selfless interest. The community of God thrives on selfless interest. So we have them to return the interest, return back what they had taken and leaned against their payment. This way they fulfilled the biblical mandate, as I mentioned, but went above and beyond. All right, this kind of idea is something that we're, again, just like we don't see self-interest, we see selfless interest by default all over the Bible of what God expects of his people and his community. I'm going to hit you with another one right now. This is Matthew chapter 16, 24 through 25, the words of Jesus himself. Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" So this concept, I think, is right at the heart of what Christ is saying, is that if you're out to gain your life, if you're out to get everything you can, if you're out to seek your own interests, you've lost it. You completely miss what life is all about. You've lost your life. But if you're willing to lose it and lay it down, for my sake, then you're going to be able to find it. At the beginning, right, it says, if anybody wants to follow me, you've got to be able to die yourself, take up your cross, and then follow me. So it's this concept of being able to put our interests below, put ourselves below Christ, and as we'll see, other people. So, sort of morally of this story is if you want to continue to serve on mission with God, with other people, like you're going to face conflicts. That's going to happen, right? Because unity, as we mentioned, is a key part of the strategy. So in this church, right, in your dialogue, if you're discipling people or you're being discipled by someone, or just a believing group of friends or a married couple, right, or anything else, I guess, you're going to have some conflict, okay? Amen from the married couple, so I hear. That's going to happen, and that's not a bad thing. Okay, conflict is not the enemy. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily coming from the enemy. It can be a great opportunity in any case, right? It can be a cool opportunity to be able to show off who God is. It can be a cool opportunity to learn something about yourself and to be able to put your interests below someone else. But the opportunity about making that an opportunity is right where we say, am I going to put my interest above this other person? Am I going to put my interest above God? Or am I going to look out for the interests of God and other people? Okay. So the community of God thrives on selfless interest. And kind of a point that I think is worth making is that this is especially true for leaders. Okay? This is especially true for leaders. Let's finish off the chapter. It's a different story, but the same idea you'll see. Moreover, and there you see that he's connecting these ideas, that these aren't separated things. He's saying, on top of that, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of Artaxerxes the king, when I read that the first time, I was like, how many years is that? Oh, that's 12 years. And then I realized it just says 12 years right after that. So no need to count. 12 years. Neither I nor my brothers ate the food allowance of the governor. The former governors who were before me laid heavy burdens on the people and took them from their daily ration, 40 shekels of silver. Even their servants lorded it over the people. But I did not do so because of the fear of God. I also persevered in the work on this wall, and we acquired no land, and all my servants were gathered there for the work. Cool. Oh, well, I think there's no more. Yeah. Moreover, lots of moreovers. There were at my table 150 men, Jews and officials, besides those who came from the other nations that were around us. Now what was prepared at my expense for each day was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep and birds. And every 10 days, all kinds of wine in abundance. Oh, I know SBC wouldn't like that. Yet for all this, I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because this service was too heavy on his people. Remember for my good, oh my God, all that I have done for this people. So basically what he's saying is that governors, he was the governor. This is the first time we actually hear that in this book, that Nehemiah was actually not only he used to be a cupbearer, if you remember the king. So he's not only given permission to come here, but now he was given like a position of power within the province of Jerusalem for the king in Syria. So he's a governor now. And he's saying, in all the 12 years that I was governor, I'm allowed to take a tax on the people to put food at my table. because the governor had a lot of responsibilities. He had to feed people. If foreign officials came in, he had to feed them. That's why he's saying I had all these people at my table. So they're allowed to take a big tax so they can have a luxurious meal anytime they want. He said, I never did that once. I paid that out of my own pockets every time because of the fear of the Lord. And then he's basically saying, remember me, God, for what I've done. So Nehemiah, being a leader of the people, he especially has to demonstrate this quality of being able to put the interest of other people even above his own. So he didn't even break even in this scenario. He had to pay a lot of money and lost something that he was actually entitled to take. But because he didn't want to take from the people, even though he was entitled to do so, he put their interest ahead of his own. I'll tell you that this idea of being a servant to those people around you and putting their needs first above your own, I would say is like the quality to demonstrate for leaders within the community of Christ. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'd like to be a leader, or I'm in a position of leadership, or I know I'm going to lead a dialogue next year, or I'd like to be able to disciple people, this is where you should put your efforts, I think, is being able to look at other people and put their interests above your own. Okay, I mean, I can name example after example of leaders here that do that with their time, with their energy, with where they put their efforts, where they'd rather be, right? As a small example, Andy and Felicia, like Andy didn't lose half of his paycheck at the hospital because it was like the best financial decision he could make, all right? So he raises half support so he can serve us. That's a pretty big risk. Like, I've thought about it and haven't done it, because my parents were freaked out. So you're going to see this kind of quality demonstrated over and over again. I can tell you countless people who could be doing probably more wealth-producing stuff with the talents that they have in this room, and people who have sat in this room for years before, but have given up opportunities and time to serve people here and to make a difference in the lives of other people. Let me just read you one excerpt here from Luke 22. This is another story from Christ. There's this time where these disciples, they were fighting, Jesus' disciples. It says, a dispute arose among them as to which of them would be regarded one day as the greatest. They're so dumb. I love it. So the disciples are literally having a fight over which one of them one day will be considered the greatest out of all of them. So that could go up in the church split list, in my opinion, John's like, I'm always the one calling myself the one that he loves. So if I keep doing that enough, I think people will call me the greatest. But Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise their authority and lordship over them, and those in authority of them are always called benefactors, aka they're always pretending like they have the interest of the people in mind, but they're really just throwing their authority in their face. They love leading, they love being an authority, but not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become the least, and the leader among you, the one who serves. For who is the greater, the one who reclines at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who reclines at the table? But I am among you as the one who serves. Jesus flips that paradigm completely upside down. If a leader doesn't ask to be served, the leader serves. That's what it looks like here. So if that's something you're headed towards, which I think is a cool thing to be headed towards. Paul even says, if you desire to be an elder one day, you desire a good thing. So if you're looking at leading other people around here, great. Serve. Yeah. Okay. But I want to say one last thing about this kind of concept of putting our interests below the interests of other people, below the interests of God. Well, how about the motivation? Where does that come from? Okay, so I've got kind of two bullets in that, at the end of this, right? The OT motivation and the NT motivation, standing for Old Testament and New Testament. Cool thing in this passage when you read Old Testament motivation, the fear of God is what you're going to see there. Okay. In the first part in Nehemiah, if you remember when he called out the officials and the nobles, he said, ought you not to fear the Lord? Because we're going to be taunted by all our enemies. Don't you have any of the fear of the Lord in you at all? Why are you exacting this entrance? And then when he says, this is why I didn't collect the tax that I was entitled to collect. I didn't do it because of the fear of the Lord. Now that is a Hebrew word, and the word is Yud, Resh, Aleph, Hey, which is year. Everybody say that. Year. Like, what year is it? Year. Year. But it's not Ra, it's year. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Good. You guys are great. Good Hebrew speakers. Good word. And that word, it means fear. It means, it kind of has this, it has a connotation of really holy reverence. So like deep awe and respect. But there is a connotation there as well of fear, a legitimate fear of offending a holy God and his law. He's set aside who he is, right? He's a God that split the Red Sea. And this is really deep in their identity. And he said, this is my law, keep it, I'm with you, break it, you're gone. I'm going to take you out of the land. So in that sense, they do have a fear of the Lord. Not a terrible thing. Okay. So he's saying, it's a deep reverence, but it's a legitimate fear of offending a holy God. Not like a monster, more like a tornado. Like an awe, but also that could destroy me one day, potentially. But yeah, so that motivation is there, and they're looking at that, and so I think that's a lot of what Nehemiah has to look at. For us, I think we have that motivation, a deep awe, reverence, respect for the holiness of who God is, from the beginning of time to the end of time. Right? We don't stand; we're a speck in the face of who He is. And it's easy, I think, for us to forget that sometimes. That's motivation all in itself for obedience, for being able, if God says, hey, put the needs of others above your own, and that's who's saying it to us, then that's what we do. So that is a motivation in itself. But we have another one too, okay? And that's the love of God. New Testament motivation, the love of God. I'm going to read you one last passage, okay? This is from Philippians 2, if you're familiar. And I don't have it on the wall. I'm actually just going to read it to you, and I want you to just hear it. Okay, so just think about the words. Paul wrote this to the Christians who were in Philippi, but outside of time context, the same things that are true in this passage apply to us. So we could say that these are words for us, okay? So you can just listen to it. If you want to close your eyes, you can. No one's going to judge you. If you want to keep moving because you think that feels lame, keep moving. Just listen. Okay. So here's what he said. So, if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, and complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. I'm going to say that again. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others as more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is the Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Okay. So this same God who Nehemiah served in deep fear and reverence, this same God that we're just a blip on the scene in front of, is the same one who became a man, laid down his life for us. It says that he had equality with God, but he didn't consider that something to be grasped onto, but he laid down his life in our interest. So that becomes for us our motivation. And I think a greater one even than the fear of the Lord. But I think it takes the one to have the second. Yeah, if that makes sense. So what I would say is if you're facing conflict, or when you face conflict, like maybe you are facing a conflict with someone now, or maybe you just have one that you've thought about a lot, or you will. I was going to say maybe you will, but you will. When that happens, one, it doesn't mean that something is terribly wrong. Okay, conflict happens and that's okay. It's an opportunity for us. But what I would encourage you to do as a believer is to hold that conflict up into the light of the gospel. Let it sit there for a second and remember that God emptied himself out, became flesh, died on the cross. And then you tell me what rights you have in the situation. What entitlements? What on earth do we have that we can claim we have a right to grasp onto? And when we're in that mindset, then you approach your conflict. That doesn't mean that you give up every time. Okay, there are some things that it is in the interest of other people and God for you to fight for. Okay, so I'm not saying that means you just become a doormat. But I'm saying that if it's about you holding on to your rights, we gave that up a long time ago in Christ's body. So you gotta look at it in that light, which is a cooler thing than even Nehemiah and his folks had. You know, what right would we have to some kind of governor's food allowance? So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Okay, sort of an application. It probably depends on where you're at with conflict. If you're in one right now, then I think you've got something to do about it. That's my personal opinion. And then if not, then maybe just think about what ones might come up for you, what conflicts have come up in the past, and how would this have maybe shed a different light on it. So that might be a cool conversation. I think some of us, we try to do this thing where we go out to eat and talk about a passage. I've been getting away from that. I think some of us have too. So I'm going to encourage us right now. Let's do it again today. Okay, when we go out to eat, let's really talk about it. Talk about maybe an example of conflict and how the gospel might shed some light on that. But that's the thing about New Life. We're always just going to come back to the gospel. That wrote us right in. That's who we are. That affects everything we do. Okay, so so let's strive towards unity with one another, because I think that's how we show this campus who Christ is. All right, I'm going to pray. Thanks, everybody. Father, thanks so much for your word, for the story of Nehemiah. God, thanks for Jesus, that he becomes